is increasing plane loads of refugees who hate us. I mean, think about this for a second, guys. I mean, we're in Syria now, bombing their water treatment facilities, bombing their electrical facilities. And we've already destroyed Egypt. We've already destroyed Iraq. And now we're bringing these people in who we have no idea what countries they're from, and we're bringing them into the United States. Well, if we kill their families and kill their loved ones and kill their brothers and sisters and mothers and daddies, why do we think they're going to like us when they come over here? I mean, this is all designed to bring us into the jihad with these folks and to bring us into a one world government by collapsing the United States and collapsing all of Europe. It's designed to collapse the world and bring us under world government. You know, all we now all we need is a global pandemic or a war, you know, or an international disaster for this Luciferian bunch who's running everything to force a world government on all of us, which is what the Bible says is going to happen in the book of Revelation when all the seals start popping. So we need to understand that we've got a major mess right now in all these different markets and all of these commodities. I mean, look at Asia right now. We have declining currencies and trade. Every month it's getting worse. And, you know, and pretty much what they always do is like they did this after 29, you have currency wars, trade wars, then you have world wars, and it allows the banksters to continue the Ponzi scheme and keep the game going over and over and over again. But the mainstream media, the bought and paid for folks, have no interest in talking about it. I mean, we know that Murdoch has sold partial interest of Fox News to an Arab sheik, and Donald Trump straight called it out with Megyn Kelly. And that's one of the reasons I believe that he didn't go back on there, because he didn't want to get blindsided again. And I think it was a brilliant move by Donald Trump last night, now allowing himself to be manipulated by Fox News. And sadly, this is the same thing that Reagan did, but nobody wants to talk about what Reagan did. Reagan did not do the final debate with Mondale. I mean, you guys know that. Mm-hmm, and it's because because he knew he was so far ahead that the debate wasn't going to help him. It could only hurt him. And I think Trump did a brilliant marketing strategy by not being there. And, of course, CNN carried a lot of the Trump thing that he did, but then they kept cutting away from him. If they'd have left it straight on Trump, I think CNN would have some really good ratings, but they kept going back to Hillary Clinton and to Sanders and all these other people. And when you start having those people talk, nobody wants to listen to it who's conservative, because everybody loathes CNN, who's in the conservative market. But Fox is not what you think it is. They're like controlled opposition. And also remember, Murdoch is one of the guys who wants open borders and free immigration into the United States. This is the owner of Fox News, and he's one of the globalists. He's as bad as George Soros as far as I'm concerned, because as soon as Glenn Beck started talking about what was going on with the Federal Reserve banks, you remember what happened to Glenn Beck. He got drummed out of Fox within a month. It was crazy what happened to Glenn Beck. And see, that's what's happening all over now. These major acquisitions of all of these industries, as far as the broadcast industries has crippled us as far as getting the actual news. That's why everybody listening, please, listen to Steve Quayle, listen to the Hagmann and Hagmann, listen to the Hodges, listen to my show every day. We're going to keep you updated as to what's going on with all of this. Let me give you my personal example that happened to me, Doug. Back, oh gosh, it must have been 15 years ago now. There was a show on the Fox affiliate in Tampa, it's Channel 13, and it was called the Kathy Fountain Show. And I'll never forget, I went on that show, and we talked about the top. It was a big show in the afternoon. And we talked about the top 10 foods never to eat. And when I was on the show, it had a 37% market share. They told me the only time they'd ever had that big of a market share is when they had gone to the nudist colony. I kid you not. That was their quote. And what was crazy is they had this giant, huge show. They made all this money on revenue, but I slammed aspartame. And now studies we're going to cover tonight have shown that aspartame is indeed as poisonous as we thought it was, which, of course, I've been telling people for 35 years. So I slammed aspartame. Well, they called me back 6 months later, and they said, hey, Guy, Ted, we want you back on, but there's one thing you can't do. You cannot mention aspartame again. They have told us they're going to pull the funding, and they're not going to advertise with us anymore for their diet soda products if you talk about aspartame again. So we're being basically blackmailed by the manufacturer of these products not to allow you to speak. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. That happened to me personally. That's not something I read about in a story. And then I found out a few months later, they had another show on that same network called The Investigators, and you can pull this up on YouTube right now. And they did this big show on bovine growth hormone. And when Fox found out they were going to release this, that Monsanto went berserk on them and told them they couldn't release the story, and they killed the story on bovine growth hormone. And you can watch, and the guys all lost their jobs over this. It was crazy. And you can watch that on YouTube. And so this was the same station that I was involved in. So, yes, Donald Trump was right. It's all about the ratings. It's all about the numbers. And last night he caved in the ratings for the Republican debates by not being there. He cost him millions and millions of dollars of ad revenue because he couldn't charge the rate card they had quoted these guys because they did not have the amount of listening audience that they were supposed to have. Everything in radio and on TV depends on numbers. And if the numbers aren't what they're supposed to be or projected properly, then what happens is the advertiser can say, hey, look, you told me I was going to reach 27 million viewers. I reached 500,000. You charge me X amount. I only want to pay X amount. And they have to do that. In many cases, they have to honor that because they'll take them to court otherwise. Because when you start getting into this big advertising game with these big boys, and they're spending hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars a year in advertising for revenue to generate revenue, if you're charging them one rate card and they're getting another one, they don't play that game, Doug and Joe.
Yeah, and if folks listen to that, exactly what Ted said, because you're looking at a business. Well, enough said, but you really have to understand exactly what Ted is saying here and understand the monetary consequences. That's involved here.
And you mentioned the how the media is owned, and everybody. All the outlets have, basically a few people to answer to. Well, yesterday we read an article that over 50% of the internet is owned by 10 major companies, and those companies stem back to the big six that own the press, radio, and TV markets.
That's right.
Well, and that's why it's almost impossible if you try to use the Google matrix to try to get proper numbers for anything. And the same thing when you try to do YouTube or anything else. I mean, even some of the Alexa. I mean, you can't get accurate numbers on how many people are listening or how your websites are ranked. Because all of that's it's true. All of that's like trade secrets. And if you try to break into that, you can find these companies will say, well, you pay us X amount of dollars, we'll get you X amount of numbers, blah, blah, blah. And they never produce what they say they're going to do. Not one time have I ever hired these guys. They ever produced anything. I hired this guy one time. Gosh, he was expensive too. I couldn't believe how much money I was paying with him. I couldn't see any difference in my numbers. And finally he kept saying, well, I got to get this in place and this in place and this in place and this in place. Then we're going to pull out the big guns. Those are his words. Those are quote his words. We're going to pull out the big guns, the big guns, the big guns. So I'm paying him and paying him and paying him. Finally, 6 months into this thing, I said, hey, dude, when are the big guns coming out? And finally he told me, Doug, there are no big guns.
So
he didn't know. He couldn't do it.
Nothing you can do.
Because he couldn't. No, there's nothing you can do. So you have to build it through word of mouth, like your show has done, in which you guys have millions of listeners. Gosh, I probably have hundreds of thousands of listeners now on my show because we had a huge database that we promoted the show to, which have been listening to it. So, I was able to get a real big jump start on my show. So when I open the phone calls for callers, I get slammed with phone calls like you guys would if you open the phone calls up. And so it's like that gives you a really good indication of how many people are actually listening or how many phone calls you get. And because I've been on a lot of shows that they open the phone lines up and nobody even answers. Nobody calls. I know when I was hosting the Power Hour last year, Lord, I had 6 lines on hold on my Comrex, and as soon as I said phones are open, all 6 lines just locked down.
Right.
And a lot of them wanted to talk to the guests or to ask me questions, especially a lot of health questions. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciate Joyce allowing me to do that. In fact, Doug, I think I interviewed you twice when I was doing those interviews.
Yeah, you did, actually, on the Power Hour.
Yeah. But let me give you a little bit more stuff here about what's going on. Let me share something about Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley has $31 trillion in derivatives right now, just Morgan Stanley. I'm going to give you some numbers here. These are the real numbers. Now, what people don't realize is this. The commercial banks, okay, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, a lot of which are part of this Federal Reserve Bank, have $192 trillion in derivatives themselves. I mean, think about this. This past week, I went to watch that movie, The Big Short. And I don't recommend it for anybody who's a Christian because the language is filthy. I don't think I've ever heard the F word used that many times in a movie my entire life. If it hadn't been the movie that I wanted to watch to see what they were saying about this, I'd have got up and walked out. So as a Christian, I really didn't like being there. But as a person who also got nudity in it too, so I don't recommend you go to see it. But if you add the Morgan Stanley's derivatives, this total runs at $247 trillion in notional derivatives with just the 5 banks holding 93% of the total. And this doesn't even include the derivatives that are global with the 2 quadrillion with Deutsche Bank and all these other big banks. This is a major Ponzi scheme, Doug, and it's going to come crashing down around us. Now, the $220 trillion global debt crisis, not including derivatives, is upon us right now, and that was caused by the Fed printing fiat currency hand over fist. A lot of this information, by the way, tonight is from Gerald Celente. I've gone through multiple videos that he's done because I really like Gerald. I also interviewed him when I was on the Power Hour. And what had happened is we had the Fed start pumping all of this money into these third world markets to prop them up and to put them in debt with the International Monetary Fund. But now the dollar has gotten very strong. Their currencies have collapsed, and now the commodity prices have dropped. So now they can't pay the money back, so their currencies are crashing. If this $220 trillion debt bubble breaks, it'll make 2008 look like a walk in the park, which was a couple $1 trillion. I mean, this is insanely bigger than what we had back then. Look at Europe. They're continuing to do QE, $60 billion a month into 2017. Now they have negative yield interest rates in Europe. Panic decisions are trying to keep this Ponzi scheme alive. Many people in the emerging countries will be leaving their country. This is what we've seen now in Africa and migrating into the northern parts because they don't know what else to do because they're starving to death. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, all they're going to do is just take us to war again. I remember a quote from Einstein said, "I don't know which weapons will be used in World War III, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." I mean, it's going to be bad if they take us to war and they do this. And I don't think it's going to be nuclear. We're so far past nuclear war now. It's beyond belief with the space-based weapon systems that we have. Look at gold and silver demand is off the charts in the third quarter of this year. Gold was up 207% in the USA the third quarter of this year, 70% in China. It costs about $1,050 just to mine gold. But gold is being totally manipulated by naked shorts. Don't believe that? Look at the fact the LIBOR folks. We found that was rigged. The Forex, it was rigged. The gold in Europe demand is up 35%. The thing I really like about all of this, Doug, is the Fed will not allow us to read their minutes for 5 years after the meeting. That's how much power they have over the United States. We cannot read Fed minutes for 5 years. And if you read the Fed minutes from back in 2007, 2008, they had no idea how to fix what was going on, if those are actually the real minutes, because they had 5 years to change the minutes if they wanted to. So, I mean, if there was a terrorist strikes right now, or the central banks who run our country, they could say the computers got shut down, all this digital stuff got wiped out, and they would skate on every bit of this stuff, just like they did in 2007. And that's my forecast for the year.
Okay.
The stock market, I believe the stock market is going to continue to ratchet down. I believe gold and silver prices are continuing to get manipulated. And I have one more caveat to add here, and I'll ask you both this question. If we know the Federal Reserve can print money, unlimited amounts of money, into the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars on off-book balance sheets and not tell anybody where the money went, under Congress won't tell you, refuse to tell you, how do we know right now they're not still printing trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to hold the market up right now the way they're doing it? And how long can they continue to do it if they're doing that? The answer to that is they'll continue to do it until the rest of the world decides that we're no longer going to be the reserve currency of the world and start using other currencies to trade for oil, and the petrodollar dies. If the petrodollar dies, the United States is going to find itself in an unbelievable mess with these giant deficits that we're running, because nobody's going to buy our debt and nobody's going to be able to do anything with our currency because it'll go to third world status and we're going to end up with hyperinflation. What do you guys think?
I think you're right on the money.
Yeah.
You can look to see to the Weimar Republic to look to see how far they can go with printing the currency. They can print those currencies until it's worthless, which it basically has become. It holds a very small percentage of value that it did 100 years ago. But in the Weimar Republic, they couldn't take a wheelbarrow full of $1 million marks to buy a loaf of bread.
And Ted, if I can just interject something here, I really truly believe that our listening audience is the most intelligent on the planet, because I've never, I've never heard of this before until a couple of days ago, although other people have. A website called marketskeptics.com. An author, Eric D. Carbonell, wrote back in 2011 about the Treasury Exchange Stabilization Fund. Okay, I don't know whether you've ever heard of that, the ESF, or the Exchange Stabilization Fund. At this, all you have to do, folks, is put ESF, what I've been afraid to blog about, or just look at marketskeptics.com and search for ESF. There's a 5-part video series. Very quickly, Ted, I just want to tell you about this. The ESF is officially in charge of defending the dollar. It's the government agency that controls the New York Fed, runs the CIA's black budget, and is the architects of the world's monetary system that includes the IMF, World Bank, and so on. And it's the ESF financing through the OSS, and then formerly, and then of course the CIA, built upon the worldwide propaganda network, which distorted histories. But the bottom line is this, and they came into creation through a congressional bill back in 1934, and but all of this. I said all of that to say this: one of the real issues, and again, I thank my members of my audience, Bob, Meg, and so on. The real issue is that the ESF is perhaps one of the most interesting aspects, something I've never heard of before, and I believe that exposure to this is perhaps, well, far beyond necessary. But I don't know if you have any comment on if you've ever heard of the ESF before or not, but I never did.
Yeah, I have, Doug. It's all tied together to the International Monetary Fund and also to the Bank of International Settlements through Switzerland, okay, which was originally set up after World War I for the debt payments for the Versailles Treaty. All of this stuff is corrupt. I don't for 1 minute believe that there's parts of our government that control this. I believe that our government has been completely taken over by the international banking community. And I believe that they're the ones that are running this and doing this. I believe that these guys are so wicked and so awful, and I've talked about them so many times with all these human sacrifices and all the crazy stuff these people do and all the Satan stuff they do, that they're the ones that are running this thing. And they want us. I mean, George Soros is so evil, it's unbelievable. And so is Henry Kissinger and the rest of those guys. And I know Kissinger. I mean, I've met Kissinger. I've talked. Oh, by the way, Doug, I've got two guys that are good friends with Donald Trump. And they're getting a message to him. They both know him personally, and I'm trying to get him to come on your show.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, that would be good. I've
got two guys that are in contact with him constantly, and in fact, the one guy has already told me he has committed that he will ask him if he will come on.
Okay, yeah, I've got some direct questions for him, and I know our audience does as well, so that would be great, man.
And a few quotes from Kissinger. You said he is evil. He is truly evil. His book, The Final Days, he wrote, the elderly are useless eaters. Also, he wrote, military men are dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns as foreign policy. And then he gets into, continued to talk and getting to State Memorandum 200 about the depopulation agenda, requiring it should be the highest priority of foreign policy towards the third world.
That's right. I met him. He was one of the speakers at one of the seminars I did back in the 90s. And he's a very short fella. He's only like about 5'2", 5'3", just very strange. I mean, you can almost feel the presence of evil when he walks up. I mean, there's something really nuts about this guy that he's this old and he's still alive. It's like a lot of these old people that are involved with all of the satanic stuff. Apparently, that's one of the little things they bargain for is living longer and longer. And I guess that maybe because they're demon possessed. I don't know, guys. I mean, you have to talk to Russ Dizdar or Steve Quayle about all that. Then they're a lot more, versed in that than I am. But the craziest thing about all of this stuff is that I know these guys. And I've told you before, if I had known what I know now 20 years ago when I was doing all of this stuff, of course, I would have been immediately kicked off of the seminar circuit because I would have asked the wrong people, or I would have asked the right people the right question, and I'd have been gone.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, I've sat down, with Benjamin Netanyahu, and I've had dinner with him. I've had private dinner with just 5 of us with President, H.W. Bush. And I've done all, not W, that President H. Bush, for the older one, Dad Bush. And I mean, if I'd have known about Prescott Bush and, him and Smedley Butler, I'd ask him that question, which then I've been kicked out for that. So I know Schwarzkopf, Colin Powell. I know all of these guys. I know the founder of Yahoo. There's so many people out there that I met that I only wish that I'd had some information on how to talk to them in a way that would not have put them on the defensive about some of these issues that we talk about. And I will say to you this, though. A lot of people say they have been with President. They've seen video of President Bush's eyes going reptilian and going slitted. Guys, I've sat right there with dinner with him, and I've sat there and I've had probably 50 conversations with the man, and I've never seen that. I mean, I'm standing 3 feet away from him, 2 feet away from him. So if somebody tells you that, I never saw any of that. So it's just kind of a crazy thing when you start getting this internet fodder and this chatter going on. But I've actually met the guy, sat down, had dinner with him. In fact, the day we had dinner with him, it was me, Peter Lowe, President Bush, Tony Robbins, his wife, and I believe Sharon was with us. So I think that's 5 or 6 people at dinner, and we had one table in this huge banquet hall with this really fancy china and really fancy silverware. So it was pretty interesting to be able to have that was right after he was president. This was like in 94, 95, something like that, maybe 97. So it was a few years after he was president. Let's talk about some health stuff if we can, guys. Is that all right?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes till the top of the hour break, so go ahead and get into it.
Well, I got a bunch of stuff to cover with you guys tonight, and again, thank you so much. I mean, I've gotten so many emails, from your listeners. Oh God, your listeners are so wonderful. I love these guys. I love you guys, and I just pray that I pray that everybody who listens to the show is blessed. I pray that God's face shines upon you, that He's gracious unto you. He gives you peace. He gives you prosperity. He gives you long life. Because the Hagmann listeners are the absolute best in the world. I've been on so many talk shows, and guys, let me share something with you. I don't always get it right. Gosh, I cover such a broad variety of topics. Sometimes I make mistakes. Please forgive me when I do. I'm doing the best I possibly can in a situation that's very fluid and a lot of things change on an ongoing basis. So if I do mess up or do say something that's not quite right, it's not something I'm intending to do and it wasn't done on purpose. I do believe I'm a Christian. You guys know that. So I'm doing the best I possibly can. And so when I do mess up, I ask you to forgive me. So thank you so much. But let's look at this. The dangerous dichotomy of birth control pills. People use birth control pills to try to not have babies, but they cause blood clots, strokes, and heart attacks. These are serious negative effects of hormonal contraceptives, and they're undeniable. I mean, here's what I tell you guys. If you're going to be doing stuff like this, you got to start taking vitamin E as a blood thinner. Vitamin E is one of the most important blood thinners. In fact, Barbara Bush was talking to me one time about Dan Quayle and how he was having really bad problems with blood clots in his legs because he was flying so much. And I told her, I said, but the best thing he can do is to take vitamin E and cod liver oil. These two things really, really help the blood to flow and be less have lower viscosity. So it makes it, I guess that'd be a higher viscosity. Lower viscosity. So the blood will thin. The blood needs to be like water. So when it goes through the body, it doesn't get stuck on things. It starts clotting on things. Super important that you drink enough water, distilled water. Now we find out that almost all the major manufacturers of water, Joe and Doug, all the bottled water manufacturers, like 90% of them, add fluoride to the bottled water.
Yep.
They add fluoride to it. I mean, have you guys done the story on that yet?
No, but but we've gotten emails saying, "Did you know this?" And no, we didn't know this until our listeners told us this.
Yeah, I watched a documentary earlier this week dealing with fluoride and distilled water. They said was the only safe way
exactly
to avoid that.
No, it is.
And the food, how much fluoride's in food, I was unaware of that until watching this documentary.
We're going to talk about that again in a few minutes when I talk about the ways they're killing us, and I'll probably have to go through it pretty quickly because we won't be able to cover it all. But the only way you can do it is distilled. That's right. That's the only way because the water separates from the solids in the distilled, and then the fluoride turns into a gas and goes through what's called a volatile gas vent. At our website, healthmasters.com, we have the best water distillation systems available in the world. That's what I personally use, Doug. I know you have one of those units too.
I use it, yep. And I'll tell you something I've never seen. I didn't think there could be so much crud. Folks, you're drinking crud in your water, okay? And now I used to have a distiller. This is not a sales pitch, but I got to tell you, your distiller does something that the other distillers don't do. I've never seen so much crud come out of our water than with your distiller. So.
No, we have the best. Oh, by the way, one more thing too. Since we're talking about product, our purple sticks are back in stock. We were about out of them. They shipped us some more, so we still have you. If you want to order purple sticks to get more energy, I used one tonight at 5:30, and I'm still all geeked up, dude. I'll be taking a melatonin tonight to calm down from that one. So they work great. They really work great. I use them every morning instead of coffee because they don't cause an elevated cortisol. They don't make you store body fat. They don't increase the risks of heart disease and actually decrease the risks of a whole bunch of degenerative diseases, including different types of cancer because they're green tea extracts. So they're phenomenal products. And again, they're at our website, healthmasters.com. And also, Dave Hodges' joint protocol is back in stock again because we had run completely out of those products. And of course, the blood sugar protocol with you, Doug, is still there.
Yep.
And I hear you had Katie on with you the other night talking about what we were doing with her.
Yes, and we said nothing until Katie decided to go public and let people know that she was suffering from cancer. We got about a minute left before the top of the hour, Ted.
Well, yeah, because I would never talk about that because I didn't know she was going to go public with that. And so, but Katie's a wonderful person, and I love her, man. She's great. And I love all of you guys, and I love the listeners. I mean, you guys are so nice. And, and that's the whole thing. I mean, let's all of us support each other and just forgive one another, be nice to one another, and realize that we're all in this mess together. We're all sprayed with chemtrails.
That's true.
We're all being infected with Morgellons. I mean, it's just awful what they're doing to us, and they're treating us like we're a bunch of lab rats. But at least we're awake, Doug and Joe. At least we know what they're doing, and at least we know that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us.
Amen.
I had a talk.
Hold that thought.
Stay with us, buddy.
You're listening to Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Friday, January 29th, 2016. We'll be right back after these short messages. Stay with us.
Are you hungry for worship, revival, and restoration? Doug and Joe Hagmann want to invite you to Hear the Watchman Conference Dallas 2016, March 18th through the 20th at the Hilton Lakes Conference Center. This amazing three-day event will include inspired speakers: L.A. Marzulli, John B. Wells, Pastor David Langford, Coach David Daubenmeyer, Paul McGuire, Russ Ditzar, Pastor Billy Crow, Greg Jackson, Doug and Joe Hagmann, Reverend Philip Benham, and special guest Demetra Dudeman's grandson, Michael Boldia. So please join us in hearing the truth, which will set us free, breaking the strongholds that bind us from true salvation. Join us in hearing the brave watchmen of Jesus Christ. Mark your calendar now for Hear the Watchman Conference Dallas 2016. For more information and reservations, go to HagmannandHagmann.com and click on the Watchman link. You will be empowered and blessed as never before. We feel the time is up, and we really need to gather His people and prepare spiritually, mentally, and physically for His coming while we